Okay, it's time to do some.
Welcome to our Backyard Brothers podcast. um, we are -1 tonight. Yancey's not here. Uh, some scheduling conflicts is all over there, and so we are going to manage the three of us here, talking football mainly, uh, and also a lot of NBA stuff later on. We're going to be doing an NBA mid-season report, and we'll get there in a little bit. But first of all, wanted to at the end of last week we mentioned the three then new hires in the NFL, just kind of quick and talked about them very quickly. That Ben Johnson had been hired by his division rival Chicago Bears, and the New York Jets had brought Aaron Glenn back home, where he was a first round pick and a Pro Bowler, and that the Patriots brought home their own linebacker, Mike Vrabel, as well to coach them. Since then, we've had three other um, coaching hires in the NFL. Um, they are in order of hiring. The Jacksonville Jaguars hired Liam Cohen, the Buccaneers offensive coordinator. It's the second straight year that the Buccaneers offensive coordinator has got a head coaching job. Dave Canales with the Panthers the year before. So Liam Cohen, now the Jaguars head coach, gets to stay in Florida. I'll mention them all, and then if you have any comments about them all, you can chime in. And then the Las Vegas Raiders surprised everyone by hiring Pete Carroll, the former Seahawks head coach, and last year he was the vice president of football operations. Moved into the front office, but did so a little unwillingly. He wanted to be the head coach still, so now he gets to be the head coach in Vegas. The oldest head coach, I believe, in NFL history at this point. He's almost 80, I think, or he is 80.
No, he's turning 74 this year.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah.
I thought Bill Belichick was older than that, but
He's like 8 or 9 months older than him. It's very close, but
okay. Thanks for that. He just looks like he's 80, but
yeah.
acts like he's 24. So,
Yep.
and lastly, we made some jokes about what the Dallas Cowboys are going to do, but the Cowboys pulled the biggest joke of all by hiring Brian Schottenheimer. Apparently, no one wanted to work for Jerry Jones, or no one wanted to be Jerry Jones' puppet. And so they had to promote from within and hire their own offensive coordinator, Brian Schottenheimer, who didn't even call the plays. Mike McCarthy called the plays. So we'll see how that goes. Those are the three hires. The Saints are still biding their time. For a while, they were linked with Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator for the Bills, but he pulled out of that discussion. He will not be in there. And so the Saints now kind of have to start over and figure out who they want to hire. No one's in competition, so they can kind of take their time and choose whoever they want. But, yeah.
Yeah. So I can comment on reverse order with the Saints. It makes me wonder if they're trying to hold out for, one of these teams that are playing in the Super Bowl, right? If they're going to try to make a play for Spags or whoever.
Vic Fangio.
Yeah, Fangio. I don't see Spags taking a head coaching role again anytime soon. I think he likes what he's doing. He's been a head coach before, and I think he likes what he's doing, and he's good at it. So I don't know what they're holding out for or what the talk is, but we'll see for that. With the I forgot who was
Cowboys.
The Cowboys. Yeah, I also thought that was a crazy thing. It's like, wait, so we had problems with the offense all year, and so you're going to promote your offensive coordinator to be your head coach, even though he didn't call plays, he just kind of designed them, and wasn't play design part of the problem. It's an interesting thing, and it sounds like a Jerry Jones move. With the Raiders, I feel like that's purely a PR move. I'm sure Pete Carroll can still do some good coaching, but I think this is purely a PR move. With the Jaguars, I don't know much about Liam Cohen. Buccaneers had a great year, but they've had 2 good years with 2 different offensive coordinators. Like, what have you proven?
Yeah, I wasn't blown away by really any of the, especially any of the new hires. I wasn't really blown away by a whole lot of them this year. I think that I slightly disagree with you, Dustin, on the Raiders hiring. I think it was partly PR. I don't think it was all PR. I think that they have a belief that Pete Carroll can do wonders. I don't think he can, but I think they think that. So I think they really believe that Pete Carroll's their guy. And I think that part of it was PR. I think he'll do good there, but he's not going to bring him any championships or anything like that. For what the other ones we're talking about, what were Jaguars. All I can think about is his press conference when he said Duval. It was the creepiest thing I've ever heard, and immediately gave me a foreshadowing of 0-17. That's what I see. Duval is what he did. It was really weird. So that gave me a big red flag. I don't like that. But aside from that, I kind of like you, Dustin. I don't know a whole lot about him other than he did well playing calling plays for the Bucs for Mayfield. So, and then what was the other team we're talking about? I'm trying to remember now.
Cowboys.
Oh gosh, yeah. So the only comparison I think I can make right now, and it's not really a fair one, but it's the closest one, is Jerry Jones is kind of like the new Dan Snyder right now, if you will, and that he's just a kind of a corrupt, kind of horrible person to work for. No one wants to be there, and they're just going to keep making worse and worse decisions until he either dies or he steps down. And I don't think he's stepping down. So until he dies, which could be next year, we never know. He's super old. So I just think there's just no hope right now with what they're doing. And you know, Schottenheimer, he was Seattle Seahawks OC a few years ago, and I wasn't, especially in hindsight, I was not a big fan. And then looking at the Cowboys, how they did this year, like you said, he didn't even call the plays with them, and I just don't really know what he's doing and how he's going to make this work. He didn't really make it work very well as an OC by himself. So how he's going to do it as a head coach, and I just don't see it. So Jerry Jones needs to just go, just go.
A little bit of just added. I mean, I don't know if it should come as a surprise that I know a lot about all of these guys, but just a little bit of just background and maybe being fair to them. Liam Cohen is a Sean McVay disciple. He was the Rams offensive coordinator for a few years. He won the Super Bowl with the Rams as an offensive coordinator, and then he went to the University of Kentucky in 2 separate years, bookended around a return to the NFL. So he went to 3 different places in 3 different years, but 2 of those were the same place at the University of Kentucky as the offensive coordinator. And so he keeps bouncing around, but everywhere he goes, he wins. And so I like what they're doing in Jacksonville, but Jacksonville's, with Trevor Lawrence, it's difficult to predict. It seems like they could be anywhere between a 3-win team and a 14-win team, and you never know about Jacksonville. As far as Pete Carroll, obviously he's the most experienced. They've gone from the least experienced head coach, Antonio Pierce, who was an interim coach last year, to the most experienced head coach in the entire NFL, in Pete Carroll, who's been a head coach since the early 90s when he was a head coach of the Patriots and then the Jets and then USC and then Seahawks. So they obviously have an agenda there to get a lot more experience in the head coaching role. And whatever they think about that. As far as Schottenheimer, I mean, we all think the same thing about him, but the one thing I can call out for the Cowboys is that Brian Schottenheimer is the son of a head coach, a really good head coach, Marty Schottenheimer. If you're thinking of, if you know him, I remember I was, when I first watched football, he was the head coach of the Chargers for a long time. I think for about 10 years. Kept them getting to the playoffs and all that. He was also a Chiefs head coach back in the early 90s. And before that, he was a Browns head coach. The last time the Browns were really good and made it to the AFC Championship game, his dad, Marty, was the head coach at that time. So he has a lot of institutional knowledge of football. He's been in the coaching business his whole life. So, think about that a little bit. Anyway, any last thoughts about the coaches?
My only response is I can't solve a Rubik's Cube, and our dad can do that great. So I don't think it matters too much.
Fair.
Yeah, that's fair. But okay, looking at our agenda for this week, that was not part of it because I had forgotten about it. So moving to the conference championship reviews first, the two games from last weekend. Let me pull them up here. Share screen. Playoffs preview. Okay, are you seeing Commanders versus Eagles?
Yeah.
Yes.
The NFC Championship game. It was it was a blowout, 55-23. Eagles had no problem moving up and down the field. There were 6 rushing touchdowns in this game, but from just the Eagles, 3 by Saquon and 3 by Jalen Hurts, and 1 passing touchdown as well. I'm gonna, whoops, head back here. Yeah, Saquon. I mean, according to any other player, that's a tremendous game. 118 yards and 3 touchdowns. For Saquon, that just seems run of the mill for him. Although, if you remember the very first play, he took it 75 yards for a touchdown, and so there's that. And then Jalen Hurts had 10 carries for 3 touchdowns. He also threw a touchdown to AJ Brown. Meanwhile, the Commanders just stumbled over their own feet the whole game. They had 4 turnovers. 1 interception from Jalen Daniels, and 3 fumbles. 1 by Eckler, 1 by a receiver, and 1 by a kick returner. And so you're not going to win when you lose the turnover battle 4-0. That's one thing. And then they couldn't stop the run either from Jalen Hurts or Saquon Barkley. That's my analysis. You guys go.
Okay, me first. Okay. Well, I got the Eagles right, so I thought it'd be a lot closer than that, and was hoping it'd be a lot closer. Where do I even start? I think that the Eagles, especially playing in Philadelphia, I think was hard for Commanders. They played there before earlier this year. They lost there as well. But like you said, Scott, you can't turn the ball over 4 times and expect to even have a chance, let alone win. And so, and then it's hard when you're going against the best running back in the league, and Saquon Barkley, if not who should be the MVP as well, not just the best running back. So it makes me excited to see what the apparent best defense can do against the best running back. So I think that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I think what was it? 2 out of Saquon's first 3 carries were touchdowns.
Right.
And it's not like he's a goal line back. The first carry was from 80 yards away, and yeah, and so incredible job not only by Saquon, but the play design and the offensive line, the downfield blockers. I mean, it's fun when you see Saquon, running down the field, and AJ Brown is 30 yards down the field blocking. Like that shows a true team play design and great coaching to really put it all together. So that was great to see. And then they just never let up, and Washington, I feel like, was stumbling backwards the entire game, trying to figure out a way to stop the run, and never been able to do it.
Yeah. I mean, we'll talk about this in the NFL review that we'll do piece by piece, but I think obviously the Commanders are hurt. They wanted to win this game. Obviously, at the same time, you got to really feel that they completely overachieved this year to get to the NFC Championship game when no one expected it. So again, they wanted to win, but they are set up much better than anyone thought they were for a really great run in the future. And so they got to feel proud of what they did this year. Okay. Next one, the AFC Championship game, the Bills and Chiefs in Kansas City. This one ended, 32-29. And I'm trying to remember this game flow because it was the Bills. Uh, yeah, I'll go first again here since I'm talking. But the Bills actually had a lead for most of this game, and but you just felt, and when I say you, I mean me. Maybe Dustin felt this way. Maybe Cody felt this way too. The Bills did not bring their best game to this. You saw it from the very beginning. Josh Allen's first two passes he threw directly to Chiefs players who dropped it. And so it could have got a lot worse, but like he seemed really stressed out at the very beginning. Josh Allen did about the stage again because he was off, and it wasn't just that first two plays. He was off the whole game. I thought he didn't throw it very well. He didn't run it very well, and still the Bills led for most of that game. And so you got to feel that maybe neither team really brought their best game, but against the Chiefs, you can't make mistakes. Because the Chiefs just have this ability that we've talked about before on this podcast that in the playoffs they say, okay, we're not going to make mistakes anymore. And Patrick Mahomes did have a fumble in this game that he lost, and so I guess they did make one mistake there, but the Bills made a bunch more, and it sucks when you're like if you're a Bills fan, you've lost four straight, or if you're just not a fan of watching the same team win every time, like Cody over here. But and it sucks when you hear this, but it's true. To beat the Chiefs in the playoffs, you pretty much have to be perfect, and the Bills weren't that.
Yeah, I'll go next. Save the boasting for Dustin at last. I think that Josh Allen said it well in his press conference, which is to be the champs, you got to beat the champs. And I mean, it's obvious that way, right? They've been the champs last 2 years straight. They're trying to prove they can be for a third year straight and make history. And they didn't do that. I think I agree with you, Scott, that they didn't, they could have played a lot better overall. And I was going to say that I saw this somewhere. I think it's true. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Scott or Dustin, but Josh Allen has beaten Mahomes and the Chiefs anytime they've played in the regular season, but they have never beat them in the playoffs, which is when it matters. And so you got to focus. I mean, you can win all you want in the regular season. It doesn't matter if you're not going to win in the postseason. You can go 17-0, but if you're going to lose in the postseason, it doesn't matter, right? And so same thing with you can go 10-7 in the regular season, but if you end up winning the Super Bowl, like that's what matters, right? And so Josh Allen and Sean McDermott and company, the Bills, they just need to figure out how to win the big game. They're basically being Penn State of the NFL right now. They just can't win the big games, and so and I feel for them because the Bills deserve it. I mean, I really love to see them there, but you can't force it, I guess. So Dustin.
Yeah, Scott, like you, I had that feeling, but for me, that feeling was the other way. Was that I felt that I don't know if the Chiefs can come back from this. If the Chiefs make one mistake, it's going to be over, and they really limited the mistakes, did well, and converted 2-point conversion, things like that. Whereas the Bills, I feel like they lost a little bit of their poise. You look at what they did against the Ravens and the Broncos, fantastic poise. Decision making by the coaching staff was really, really good. In this game, I thought Josh Allen had great decision making. Like he really did good. He made great passes. Outside of those first two, he ran whenever he needed to, and it was great. But I feel like some of the coaching decisions, do you know, Scott, how many fourth downs they went for? It was what, five?
They went for 5. They got 2.
Yeah.
So now to be fair, those two were big. The two that they got were big. They scored a touchdown on one, and they scored a touchdown on the drive that they got another. But the three they missed were also big, and that's just a fourth. That's fourth down. It's a high leverage play. If you make it, it's a huge thing. If you miss it, it's a huge thing. It's just so.
And we've talked about different philosophies, but I also thought that I think it was on their first or second drive they went for on fourth down, and so I feel watching the Bills that they came in, going against Goliath and a little bit, they lost some of their poise where they're immediately like, okay, we've got to win this game in the first quarter or else we're not going to win it at all. We've got to hit home runs in the first quarter or else there's nothing at all. And I feel like they just kind of lost it from a poise, from a decision-making, from feeling like the Chiefs were bigger than just a football team.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. I mean, their very first play, Josh Allen tried to throw it 50 yards down the field into a team meeting, essentially. And so I actually it was to Brian Cook. That's who it was to. And Brian Cook just dropped it. He actually dropped 2 interceptions in a row. Brian Cook did. But the two last things about this game for me. One is a stat that just blew my mind, and I'm sure it's going to blow all of your minds as well. So Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, when they have been trailing in the playoffs, like any drive that they're trailing in the playoffs, there's been 27 drives since Patrick Mahomes has taken over as the Chiefs where they've been trailing in the playoffs. They have scored on 26 of them.
That's an incredible stat. There's that final play, that final fourth down with that amazing blitz, blitzing cornerbacks, and they really, really confused that Bills offensive line. They didn't know where to cover, and basically there's 3 rushers that were free to the quarterback and 2 linemen sitting around be like, well, who are we supposed to like that was an incredible play design, and it's a bet that absolutely worked off. The second play that I have to call it for the Chiefs, tip of my hat is Andy Reid. I don't think anybody's figured out how to stop this play. I don't know what they call it, but basically where Mahomes and the running back roll out together at the same time. And the running back can either be a lead blocker for Mahomes, or he can slip the block and Mahomes just dumps it off over to this running back or the tight end, whoever's rolling out for them. And that's been an unstoppable play, for this whole dynasty. And no defense has figured out what to do in that situation. And it's fantastic. It's the very play that the Chiefs won the Super Bowl on last year. And, they converted this big, I think they scored on it again this year, against the Bills. And so somebody's got to figure out how to stop it because it's an unstoppable play.
Yeah. I don't know what they call it, but I would call it play action boot option. That's what it is. But and the last thing, and we'll do a Super Bowl preview next week. We're not going to do it this week, but the full Super Bowl preview. But I think it's going to be really juicy to think about these two teams playing against each other, because the Chiefs have struggled against the run, which is exactly what the Eagles are best at, and the Chiefs also struggle pass defense or pass blocking, which is the Eagles' biggest strength, is their front 4 right there. On the other side, though. It's that will the Eagles make mistakes because the Chiefs will not, and so it's going to be really interesting to talk about that and to see what that's going to do. Let's stop share this one. Go ahead, Cody.
Just real quick, I think my main question, if I was Nick Sirianni, is how can I make sure, or how can I make the Chiefs make mistakes? That's the question that I'm kind of asking myself, is what can I do to make them make mistakes? Because that's a big point of it. I mean, it's really hard to be perfect. It's really hard, almost impossible. It's very hard to go a game without 0 penalties, without 0 fumbles or interceptions. It's hard to not make any mistakes. The Chiefs usually get really close to doing that. And so I'm Nick Sirianni. I'm trying to figure out right now, how can I make the Chiefs make at least 3 or 4 mistakes this game? At least.
I'll answer that question real quick so you can call them up and tell them. The mistakes need to happen on defense. Like, offensively, Chiefs are great, but they're not a high-scoring team. I mean, 32 points was one of the higher scores of the whole season, and so the mistakes that you need the Chiefs to make need to be on defense. They need to have blown coverages. They need to have, missed tackles, allow Barkley to roll off, 2 or 3 30-yard runs. Like, the mistakes need to be on defense. And if the Eagles can have long possessions, long drives, and dominate the time of possession, Chiefs aren't going to be scoring 30 points. It's all about, can the Eagles have long drives that end in scores, as well as a couple of easy scores, with a blown coverage or a 60-yard run. You can't force Mahomes to make a mistake. It's got to be on defense.
All right, let me call Nick real quick.
Okay. Let's switch gears a second and talk about basketball. Moving over to the NBA. We're not going to go team by team, but we're going to go division by division. And we can mention every team if we want, but really it's just talking high level. I expect this will take 20 minutes. So it could take longer, it could take shorter, but let's just start right at the top with the Atlantic Division in the Eastern Conference. Obviously, the Celtics are the big dog there still, 33-15, good for second place in the Eastern Conference, followed by the Knicks, who are just one game behind them, though. And so the really good 2 teams there, and then there's a load of crap after them with the 76ers, Raptors, and Nets. So, yeah.
Yeah, the Celtics are no surprise, right, to be 33-15. They're playing great. Their 2 All-Stars are fantastic once again. The Knicks, they've actually been surging. I think they've won 5 or 6 in a row. In order to get there, I think they're in the 3rd spot. We're all surprised at the poor performance of the 76ers. Those are my comments there.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have anything yet.
Okay.
I guess let me take it back. We're surprised that the 76ers are doing so poorly, but I didn't expect them to do any better than they did last year because I didn't think Paul George fit into that team.
But all of us predicted the 76ers would be in the playoffs. It's just kind of where we kind of put them. So, yeah. Okay, let's move to the Central Division. Cavaliers are still the best team in the Eastern Conference and kind of tied for the best team in the NBA at this point. But they've kind of cooled off a little bit, I would say, in order to tie the Golden State Warriors for the best record ever. They need to win their next 42 games. So that's probably not going to happen. So they're actually 5-5 in their last 10 games. So they've kind of cooled off a little bit, but they're still the top seed in the Eastern Conference if the playoffs ended today. But what's crazy to me is that all 5 of the teams in the Central Division would be in the playoffs if it ended today. Some would be in the play-in games and all that, those individual ones, but the Pistons are included in that. The Pistons are about 500. That's a big leap from where they were last year and where we thought they would be this year. And so give the Pistons some love for keeping things competitive, staying right there.
Dustin?
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry. Yeah, to comment on the Cavs, they just won again a few minutes ago, beat the Hawks. Yeah, and they're the clear favorite. They should get that number 1 seed if they can keep on pace. you mentioned the Pistons. I'm interested to see how their season is going to finish out. Pacers, I would expect to be doing a little better than they are. And so I'm interested to see how their season finishes out, especially with all their weapons there and how they did last year. And so those are just the three teams that I'm watching there in the Central Division.
If I'm looking at this correctly, am I seeing that every team in the Central Division is in the playoffs right now?
That's what I had just said. Yep.
That's what okay. That's really impressive. Even with a losing record by both Detroit and Chicago. I just think it's really impressive how well Cleveland's doing, and can't help but wonder that a lot of it's coming from Donovan Mitchell, and he's scoring 24 points a game. So, and then Jarrett Allen, I think his name is getting 10 rebounds a game on average, which is really impressive, really good. So, it's hard to beat a team that can do that well and be that productive.
Cody, to bounce off of that, so in today's NBA All-Stars, 24 points a game is not an All-Star caliber. You're seeing these, Jason Tatum's doing 30. It's you're closer to 30 as those guys, and so it's incredible that Donovan Mitchell, being the leader of the team, being the All-Star in the team, is that there's so much points coming from other players on the team. There's some great ball distribution and point sharing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, down to the Southeast. I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up.
Long way.
Yeah, it's a very long way. The Wizards have lost 15 straight games. They have won 6 games all year. They're 6-40 right now. They look like the worst team that has ever played basketball ever right now, and they might be in the NBA. They're giving the longtime process 76ers a run for their money for the worst ineptitude in professional basketball.
Do you remember their record? How bad they were? Was it 10 games, 12 games, something like that?
Yeah. Let me Google it real quick. They were 9-73.
Okay.
So the Wizards are probably going to win 4 more games at some point this year, but maybe not. I don't know. So, but not much better than them are the Hornets, who've only won 6 more games. So the Hornets are really awful too. And then the other 3 teams are technically in the playoffs. None of them are really that good. The Magic lead the pack, but they're 500 right now, 24-24. So it's doubtful that any team from that division is going to progress past maybe the first round. So
yeah,
and then sorry.
The only comment. Go ahead. Did you have more to say?
The only thing I remembered is that the Heat are just falling apart because they've suspended Jimmy Butler indefinitely now because he's a detrimental to the team. He's not even traveling with them. He's intentionally trying to get a trade, and it's ugly.
Yes, it's very ugly. To comment on him, there's this funny thing where he said of places he wanted to go. He says he did not want to go to Memphis. Says, but he would love to go to Phoenix. And, because he wants to play for a contender. Although Memphis is 5th in the West and doing great, and Phoenix is 10th in the West and below 500. So apparently this guy doesn't even watch basketball. So
he says contender, but he means as long as it's someplace that has a large market. Memphis doesn't. So
yeah. Yeah, I'm glad's maybe the wrong word, but I'm glad that the Wizards are doing as poorly. This is something that I predicted when they made those moves to bring over Kuzma and Poole. It's just no, that's not going to work. And so glad to see my predictions working out there. This division in particular is really struggling. I thought the Magic would be better than they are, and I hope that they pull it together because that's some really great young talent there.
I think I predicted them to get to the Eastern Conference Finals, and I'm not so sure about that anymore.
I don't really have a whole lot to add. I think what you said, Scott, mostly kind of covered what I was thinking.
Okay. All right, over to the Western Conference, starting with the Northwest Division, where the Thunder have pretty much the exact record as the Cavaliers. Technically, they've played one less game, so they have one less win. But other than that, they're the same level of domination right now. And we had all kind of talked about that, especially when they added what's his bucket to their the defensive star.
Caruso.
Caruso, thank you. Yes, but the Thunder are looking as good as ever. The Nuggets and Timberwolves are maybe both look like they've taken at least one step back from last year. Jokic is still playing at an MVP caliber level, but the team is not, and the Timberwolves have certainly fallen off from where they were last year. Other than that, the Jazz are right there with the Wizards and Hornets as one of the worst teams in the NBA. So.
Yeah, do they have 10 wins or something
They
like
have
that?
they have 10 wins, then they've lost 7 in a row now. So
Yeah. So with the Thunder, like this is beautiful. Sam Presti did his, beautiful move years ago, getting all those draft picks for Westbrook, and this is where you're at. We remember that big Westbrook trade to the Rockets, and this is the result of that. That part of that trade, you got SGA to come over, and then you got all the draft picks that ended up being Chet Holmgren,
Jalen Williams.
Yeah, and Jalen Williams. Like this is, and then yet they have other rookies on their team, that are great. So this is the result. This could be a great example of fantastic general management from a basketball standpoint. It was looking at Danny Ainge for the 2008 season. You can compare that now to this run that the Thunder are having. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has, over the last few seasons, quietly become the best player in the NBA.
Yeah.
I'm loud. Like I'll say that louder. Like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the best player in the NBA.
I think what I was going to say is I've never heard that name before in my life, so I don't know who that is. So apparently, but I do now. So apparently, he's better than LeBron and all those people, I guess, playing now. So, but I was going to point out something I thought was interesting is that he's leading for the 5 top stats for them. So obviously, and I mean almost 33 points per game. So he's obviously very, very good. But other than that, I do know you've said before Caruso is the best defensive player in the league, right, Dustin?
He's one of them. He's great, but I wouldn't say he's the best, but he's one of them.
Okay, so it's when you have your MVP type player you're calling out there in SGA and then also Caruso, who's really good on defense. It makes up a good team. But other than that, poor Jazz.
Yep.
I guess there's a lot to talk about in this division. With the Timberwolves having a little bit of a fall off, I'll be interested to see, as we get past the All-Star break and into playoff contention time, kind of what happens. I predicted that they would fall off a little bit, specifically Anthony Edwards, which has shown a little bit, but so interesting to see what this team does, how they're able to pull everything together. I think the Nuggets, I think they're just a little bit overshadowed by some of the other greatness in the NBA. They're still a great team. What are they, 4th, 3rd in the West? I forget what it is, but 4th. So I mean, that's a perfectly fine place to be. I'm personally happy to see Russell Westbrook performing at a caliber that we're used to seeing from him. He's performing great off the bench, and I've been watching more of his highlights. Like to see that. So, a lot to talk about in this division. That's it.
The last thing I was going to mention is it feels weird this early. I mean, I know it's not technically early in the season, but there's 3 teams that can win the finals out of 30, and the Thunder are the only one from the West that can win it, in my opinion. And out of the East, it's the Cavaliers or the Celtics, and so one of those three teams is going to win the finals, and it's probably going to be the Thunder since the Cavaliers and Celtics are going to beat the hell out of each other until they get to the finals, but one of them does.
Yeah.
So.
It's interesting you say that, but you look at the history of basketball, like the East and the West have kind of been like that almost really since the forever almost. The East have had 5 really good teams out of 15, that get into the playoffs. They cruise through the first round, and there's some slugfest in the second and third round, and then you have a great team in the finals. In the West, you got 10 teams over 500. And that it is an absolute slugfest all the way through the season and then all the way through the playoffs, where even as the 1 seed, the team you're going up against is over 500 a lot of times, and is a powerful team. And so, yeah, like you said, it's easy to look at the East and say, here's 2 teams that I know can win it, and the West be like, anything 1 through 6, I think has a good chance.
Well, and then if the playoffs started today with a 1 through 8, the Thunder would be playing the team that knocked them out in the Western Conference Finals last year, the Mavericks, and so that's a tough thing too. So, okay, to the Pacific Division. All 5 teams are above 500 in the Pacific Division right now, and so that goes to your point, Dustin, that all these teams are good in the West right now, except for the Jazz, the Trailblazers, and the Pelicans. But everyone else is pretty good. And Lakers lead the division right now, but it's literally by half a game, if that. Um, the Clippers are right behind them. Suns are right behind them. Kings are right behind them, and Warriors are right behind them. They're all within 3 games of each other, and so any of those 5 teams can win that division still. Um, and there's not a whole lot to talk about really, other than the Lakers are the ones that are winning the games in that division. They're 7-3 within that division. The Warriors are 1-8 within that division, and so that's the only kind of hierarchy that I can point out from that.
Yeah. Cody, kind of how you feel like with football. I feel like with, in basketball in some ways, I want the Lakers and the Warriors to kind of start to drop off, and I want the Kings in this division to be the ones that power through the playoffs and become this great team. I love the combination of Fox and Sabonis. I love to watch them, and so I'm a Kings fan. But to the credit, you got LeBron in year 22, being still one of the top players in the league at 40 years old, and then Stephen Curry, I feel, is just dragging his team, through greatness. So it's interesting to see these old veterans that are continuing to lead the league.
Yeah, I think the only thing I wanted to add is go Malik Monk. He's really the only person I know, so I guess I could share with you though, Dustin, is go Kings, and they've been kind of, I mean, other than Monk, they've been on my radar for a while, and I've kind of wanted them to do well.
Yeah, 2 last things for me in this division. Obviously, when Bronny James was drafted, he took all the headlines away. But the Lakers' first-round pick, Dalton Knecht, is a really good player. And I mean, he's coming off the bench. He's scoring 10 points a game, which is pretty good off the bench. He's a great 3-point shooter. So I think the Lakers really did well drafting, at least outside of the publicity stunt they pulled with LeBron's son. Dalton Knecht is a really good player.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I was going to mention, I like the Kings too, but I read yesterday, was it, that Deere and Fox, the Kings are going to start shopping Deere and Fox. And so that's hard to hear, because I wonder if that means that they're giving up and they're going to start over. So
maybe, yeah. To comment on the Lakers, yeah, with Dalton, is it Knecht or Connect?
I think it's Knecht.
Next, they also got Austin Reeves. Like, they got two guys that look like enthusiastic realtors that are just absolutely dominating the league.
Mm-hmm.
Austin Reeves is fantastic. Like I said, he looks like a realtor, and he's absolutely fantastic basketball player.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, Southwest Division. This is the one where I can start being proud, and I think Dustin, you can be proud with me. But we both said that the Rockets are going to be a really, really good team. I don't think either one of us thought it was going to be this year, but it is this year. They're the second seed in the West right now. They're 32-14. They've won 8 of their last 10 games. They are looking really good, and they lead that division. And I said that they can be good. They can be one of the best teams in the league in about 2 or 3 years, but they're one of the best teams in the league this year. And so that's a fun thing for Houston. We just talked about Memphis earlier and Dallas. Both of those teams are in the playoffs and look good. Dallas obviously was the Western Conference champion last year. And then San Antonio and New Orleans. And I haven't paid enough attention to what's going on in New Orleans. I don't think Zion's played all that much. And so obviously Zion is the difference between winning 30 games and winning 60 games. So that's crazy that he's that impactful to that team.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is that, yeah, he's a 25-30 game difference kind of guy. And he just, him and Joel Embiid are going to be remembered for not playing very much,
Yeah.
due to the injuries. Victor Wembanyama is continuing to play good with Chris Paul there on the team. It's been an interesting dynamic, but it's not adding any wins, as we kind of predicted. And then, have we talked about Phoenix yet and how they have this star-studded roster that, they're at 500 and they're 10th in the West or something, and
Yeah, we just kind of ran over Phoenix. We didn't talk about them last division, but yeah.
And I don't have anything to add, I don't think.
Okay. All right, so we've talked about all the divisions. Obviously, especially once the Super Bowl is over and after we've reviewed the NFL season, like we did last year, we'll spend 3 months heavily in basketball. But with that said, we're going to jump back over to college football real quick. So this shouldn't take very long, but I wanted to make sure that we also review the college football season the way that we do the NFL. But this will be really quick, I would think. We're only going to do the ACC today. And that's kind of what I felt about all the reviews and even previews maybe is that we don't have to do a huge dump of all of this in one session. We can spread it out. But we can talk about other things, and then one of these conferences we can talk about a week, because we have a long time before the next season starts. So ACC is the first one. Boston College lost the Pinstripe Bowl, but other than that, they were okay. They were about 500. You can see their schedule on the right. You can see some of their best players on the left. Thomas Castellanos left the team about 3/4 of the way through the season at quarterback, and so he was playing fine, but he left the team. Other than that, not a whole lot to talk about there. And you guys stop me if you want to talk about a team in particular. I'm just going to power through otherwise. But Cal finished 6 and 7. They lost the LA Bowl to UNLV. Not really great in any one category. You can see again their schedule on the right. Fernando Mendoza, their quarterback. Jaden Ott was supposed to be a top conference running back, ended up running for just over 300 yards in the entire season. So he should have left Cal last year to go to the NFL, because I'm not sure he's going to be a draft pick anymore. So Clemson. Clemson. They kept being the team that they have been the last 10 years. They won the ACC championship game against SMU, and then got thoroughly beaten by Texas in the college football playoff. You can see they were really good in points and yards offensively, 14th and 8th respectively. Really good offensive team. Cade Klubnik was really good, 29 touchdowns against just 5 picks all year long. He was a great player. Phil Maffa, their running back, over 1,000 yards rushing. So yeah, they lost the opening game to Georgia and then only lost to Louisville until the
Sorry, but what does he want me to feel?
him.
Well, my what?
Yep. Okay. Duke lost the Gator Bowl to Ole Miss pretty badly, in fact, but they can be pretty proud of what they did with their first-year head coach Manny Diaz coming in and immediately getting them to 9-3. Pretty impressive by what they were able to do. Malik Murphy, 26 touchdowns against 12 picks there. Florida State were awful, 2-10. Remember, this was a team that complained about not getting into the playoff last year, and then all their players left to the NFL, literally all of them. And because they had no one left, they won 2 games. One of them was against Charleston Southern, so they really only won 1 game against Cal. Other than that, DJ Uiagalelei, whatever, how you say his name, 4 touchdowns and 6 interceptions all year. That's awful. So. Georgia Tech lost the Birmingham Bowl to Vanderbilt. There's going to be a theme you're going to see here. Not very many bowl wins coming out of the ACC this year. They about got blown out in every game.
Lots of bowl appearances, though. Which is
A lot of bowl appearances, yes. Georgia Tech is back, at least in bowl contention now. Haynes King threw 1 interception all year. He also only threw 11 touchdowns, but Louisville finished 9-4. They did win a bowl game. They beat Washington in the Sun Bowl. Other than that, they were okay. Tyler Shaw, 23 touchdowns and 6 picks. Ja'Cory Brooks will be an NFL draft pick. He had over 1,000 yards receiving. He's going to be that next great Louisville wide receiver. They're all over the place in the NFL, and he'll be the next one. Ashton Gillott also will be a draft pick, a defensive end. Miami lost the Pop-Tarts Bowl, but 10-3, and if they didn't lose one of those 3 games that they did lose, or 2 games, in fact, if they finished 11-1, they go to the playoff, is what I'm trying to say. But they ended up losing to Syracuse in that last game, which kicked them out of that playoff. Cam Ward was great, 4,000 yards passing, 36 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, was a Heisman finalist. This was his last eligibility, so he's going to the NFL draft. I don't know where he'll be picked necessarily. I'd imagine he's a first-round pick, but I don't know where.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be the 3rd quarterback. He'll either be first or second quarterback taken.
Yeah,
I think he'll be top 10 somewhere in there, but I don't think he's going to be like a top 3 or 4 pick. But he'll be top 10.
Yeah. But yeah, they went 9-0 to start the season, and then lost 2 of their last 3 games, and that kicked them out of the playoff. In college football, it matters just as much when you lose as to who you lose to. And when you lose 2 of your last 3 games, that might kick you out of the playoff. That's what happened here. North Carolina lost the Fenway Bowl to UConn. They were okay offensively, in the top 40 in points and yards. Obviously, their biggest change is Mac Brown is out and Bill Belichick is in for next season. They lost 4 in a row here in the middle of the season, and that doomed Mac Brown and this team. Omarion Hampton, though, almost 1,700 yards rushing. He has a choice. I don't know if he's declared or not, but he'll be a senior next year if he wants to come back, or he'd go to the NFL as well. So at running back. And based on the running backs we've seen in the NFL this year with Saquon Barkley and the renaissance of the running backs, I think we'll see a little bit more first-round picks at running back this year. NC State, 6-6 in the regular season, lost the Military Bowl to East Carolina. Not a whole lot to really talk about there, though. Not great numbers. Pitt, they won their first 7 games and lost their last 7. Including the bowl game. Just a really odd season. And you can see that on the right. You win your first 7, you lose your last 6, and then you lose the bowl game. So, tale of 2 halves of a season there.
Yeah, I imagine it was kind of they started to get ranked, started to get attention. Then you lose a game and you just kind of lose all hope of a playoff, and you just continue to get lost. All of a sudden losing by 30 to Louisville there at the end.
And I meant to say they won their first 7 and lost their last 6, not the last 7. So that's still same thing. Yeah. SMU, big surprise. Obviously, they're essentially playing for free in the ACC, and they go all the way to the ACC championship game, and they get into the first round of the playoff. They lose to Clemson by just 3 in that championship game, get blown out by Penn State, but they were there, and they announced themselves very loudly that they belong. Brashard Smith, their running back, almost 1,200 yards rushing, really good defense as well there.
Is that actually Kevin Jennings? Because I thought Kevin Jennings was black.
You know what? I might have a different guy. I don't know.
I was going to say, what happened there? That's something that I'm pretty sure he's black. So
okay. Yeah. I might have put a wrong guy there. I'm not sure what happened. Because you're right. I had put this together, and sometimes when you search, it pulls up a different Kevin Jennings because it's not as. So, yeah, my bad.
okay.
You really never noticed? Well, hats off to you for not seeing color.
I don't. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Kevin Jennings would disagree with me. So he wouldn't find that quite as fun. Stanford finished 3-9. Not a good first season in the ACC, and one of those wins was against Cal Poly. So, but they did have a win against Louisville, which was big for Cal. Ashton Daniels threw 2 more interceptions than he did touchdowns this season, so that's not the way to do it. Just not a good team in Central California there. Syracuse, though, went 9-3 in the regular season. They were just the second team in the ACC, and the only 2 teams out of the ACC won a bowl game, and Syracuse was one of them. They beat Washington State in the Holiday Bowl. Really good team there. Kyle McCord led the country in passing yards with 4,300 yards, 29 touchdowns. Threw a little bit too many interceptions for his liking, but I think this was his last year of eligibility. Is that correct, Cody? Do you know?
I think so. Yeah.
So he'll probably go to the NFL. I'd imagine he'd be probably a 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick. I'm imagining. So, yeah. Virginia finished 5-7. Didn't quite get bowl eligibility. And just ho hum season. Not the greatest kind of season there. Virginia Tech, Yancey and I in particular picked them to go to the ACC championship game, and they just really did not meet up to expectations. They finished 6-7 technically with that, losing that Mayo Bowl to Minnesota in the end. Just did not live up to the high expectations that a lot of people had for them. And the last team in the ACC, Wake Forest, finished 4-8. Not a great season here either. Hank Bachmeier, their transfer from Boise State, was okay. 16 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 1,000 yards rushing for DeMond Claiborne. But yeah, only win 4 games. Not the way to do it. This is our predictions compared to the real. Good job, Cody and Dustin, for having Clemson in the ACC championship game, and for Dustin to have them in the playoff as well. But no one, and I don't think anyone would blame us, but no one had SMU in there. And Yancey and I were shut out completely. So,
Looks like
all right.
They also got the actual ACC champion right in Clemson that they won.
Yes, you did. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, any talk about the ACC or these teams as a whole, or what they should do for next year, or what any predictions are for next year?
Go ahead, Dustin. Go ahead.
As I mentioned, a lot of bowl eligible teams, but most of the teams were barely bowl eligible. They're 500, 6-6 or 7-6 or something like that.
Yeah, a lot of what's the word? Moderate teams. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Mediocre.
Mediocre. That's what I'm thinking of. Thank you. I think the only two things I want to say is kind of like you said, Scott. SMU kind of came in and kind of pushed people around and said, "We're here now. Take us seriously." So I would say, yeah, you've just got to expect them to be competitive no matter what going forward. Doesn't matter who's going to the NFL or not. I think Brett Lashley is a really good coach. They've just got a good program there. Second thing is if Dabo Swinney decides to use the portal more, and he probably should, if he does that, Clemson can become even more of a contender rather than him just trying to do this. Well, I guess what you can call now an old-fashioned way of just trying to recruit and then maintain. It's just not working in nowadays game. So he needs to focus on the transfer portal a little bit more, I think. And if he does that, then he might be. He could have won. Who knows? He could have won at the Texas game. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great comments. Yeah, it's hard to predict what's going to happen year in and year out. Clemson has been the leader in that for 10 years, and so like you said, Cody, it's he refuses to use the transfer portal, and so far it's worked out okay for him. So he hasn't learned a lesson that should make him do it, right? And so other than that, though. I would still expect Virginia Tech to be better next year. I would still expect SMU to be right there and Louisville to be right there, and Miami could drop down to where Florida State was, depending on what happens. So I don't know. Miami could be really good too. So, any last thoughts about the ACC? Okay. Next week we'll look at the Big 12, but. Cody, we have some long overdue PTI questions that we want to cover.
PATIITO.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just have two PTI questions, and they're very, very similar to each other. And the reason I bring them up is now that the college football season is over, complete. There's a lot of talk about how, or I guess, is there going to be any kind of change to the college football playoff format next year? If so, what is it going to look like? Why? Yada, yada, yada. To add to that, we also know that in 2026, they can add, they can change the format even more. They have, it's like what's the word? The contract. That's what it is. Contract is up, and they can really change a lot more. As of next year, they can only change a few things, but not much else in that. So they're both very similar to each other, but I'll just start with the first question. For next college football season, one format that is being proposed is keeping automatic qualifier idea the same. The 5 highest ranked champions still have that automatic qualifier, the 5th one being the highest group of 5 champion. However, changing the buys of who gets the buys to just the top 4 teams. And so that would be, for example, this year would have been Oregon, Georgia, Texas, and Penn State, instead of the champions getting those buys. So let's start with that idea. Do you think it'd be a good idea? Do you think it wouldn't be? Why not? Let's hear from you guys first.
I'm kind of I don't care too much. If I were to make an opinion, it would be for that for that change, because I think that's the way it should be. The 1 through 4 should get the bye, not some arbitrary winning a championship. I think your reward is that you get into the playoff, not that you get a bye in the playoff. And so that's the way it works in the NCAA tournament. Just because you win a division doesn't mean you get, or win a conference doesn't mean you get a top 1, 2, 3 seed. So yeah, I'd be for that change, seating them where they should be seated, not just because they won a championship.
It's in today's football landscape, you have to be really, really good to win your conference championship. And so if you win it, you're going to the playoff anyway. Right. And so saying you're an automatic bid into the playoff, like, you're going to get there anyway because you're going to be 10-2 or 11-1 or whatever it is. And so I feel like there does need to be some type of extra reward, and I would say something closer to home field advantage, because they took away the home. You had the bye, but you didn't have home field advantage, right? Because it was at a bowl game, right? It was at a bowl stadium, and so yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily change it, Cody, but I think that there is some extra reward that needs to be there. Whether if the conference championships get the bye, whoever it is, there needs to be a reward there bigger than just making it, because it's a fantastic feat to win your conference.
I disagree. I think that the bowl game should be a bowl game. I did not. I can't remember what your second question was, Cody. So if I'm answering this one right now, then so be it. But I didn't like the home field advantage thing. I didn't like it at all. I would have had it in a neutral site, all of the games. Like the first round, I wouldn't have had them play in a. I would have. I mean, move it to a regional site or have a bowl game that's sponsored somewhere, but I would have moved it to a neutral site. I didn't like it. Because you in that case you're giving a larger advantage to a lower seed, like in the first round you're giving the buys to 1, 2, 3, 4, but then they have to play at a neutral site their next game. While if they I would have switched around, that the first round would play at a neutral site and the second round gets to play at a home game. So that'd make more sense, but I would just get rid of that entirely. Everything neutral.
Yeah, and I think my thought as far as it goes, because they can't change it significantly for next year. They can only change a few things, and so I would with what you had first said, Scott, that your thought of what I was talking about, I would agree with is giving the first 4 buys to the 1, 2, 3, 4. They played well enough in the season to earn that. They get the bye, things like that. So that's what I would suggest. As far as everything else, I'd probably just keep it the same for at least next year. Now, going into my second question, though, is really going into 2026 when the contract is up and we can change it significantly. The question is, since it can be changed to another format, due to the suspicions of how effective or ineffective bye weeks were, expand the playoff format to 16 teams with no buys, and it being 1 versus 16, 2 15, 3 14, and so on. And really the idea for in that case is the highest seed plays at home until the next round, and then it's the like the bowl games, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, stuff like that. Now that's also my proposal. I think that would be the most fair in terms that, because it seems like the 4 teams that didn't have a bye but were home, Ohio State, I forgot, Notre Dame, all those teams, they almost kind of went into the next week against Georgia and Oregon hot and ready, and those teams were almost cooled off. And so I think that every team playing week 1 all the way through, there's the same amount of play time, there's the same amount of rest before it. And the teams that are highest are like 1, 2, and 3. Those teams are rewarded.
Skype did not like Cody's opinion, but he'll get back on, I'm sure. But I have the response to that.
Can you hear me,
Cody? There you are.
I did. Okay. All right. Well, I don't know where you guys got cut off there, but
It looks like this.
So I think you guys get what I'm trying to say. The last part of my question, though, is if you don't agree with that, why and what would you implement instead?
I'll be the first to say I don't agree with that. And my reason is I think that the 1 fewer game is much more of a reward than coming in necessarily hot and ready. Because you can, the prospect of injuries, the prospect of losing a game, playing one fewer game, I think is a much bigger reward. Uh, and so I like the buy, and and actually I think the fact that the 4 teams that got a buy lost is the exact reason we set this up, is to make you earn that. And so I don't want to make any more favors to go back to the way things were and say we need to make all of these best teams, give them all of the best opportunities to make sure that they have these all the chances to make sure that they win a championship. But the fact that those 4 teams lost is exactly the intent for what this playoff is set up to make them earn it. And so, but at the same time, like I said, giving those those 4 top teams a bye is the biggest reward I think you can offer the team. Uh, at the same time, all of those things being said, I'm also in favor of expanding it to 16 teams. Uh, but obviously, if you do that, you don't have a bye. And I think that has to come into argument there, because I really feel that giving 4 teams a bye might be more important than giving 16 teams in the field.
So
So
just real quick before you go, Dustin, so I don't forget my thoughts.
okay,
All
Dustin.
right. Well, anyway, that was great. My response to that is like, welcome back, Cody.
What just happened?
You said, so I don't forget my thoughts. And
All right. Well, I'm not sure what my internet's doing right now, but I guess it's okay right now. Do you mind if I go real quick, Dustin?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say is with the buys right now. To me, well, first off, I agree with you though, Scott. This is why we did it, and I love that it turned out that the 2 teams that were in the championship weren't even in the top 4. They wouldn't have been in that, and I love that. But I can't help but say that it's suspicious that all 4 of those teams lost, and pretty, significantly, easily they lost. It wasn't much of a battle really, except for the Arizona State game, of course. And so to me that was suspicious. So I wonder, as part of that, what you're saying, and I agree with you to an extent, should there be less of a separation? Because that was 3 weeks of bye. Typically, just in the NFL, it was you have 1 bye week and that's it. They had 3 weeks, and so it makes you really think. They probably kind of they can practice all they want, but they're not playing a real game for 3 weeks, and so to me that speaks rust. And all 4 of them lost, and so to me that wasn't an advantage. That was really a disadvantage for those 4 teams. That's the only reason why I'm saying that. It's not really trying to give them any favors or anything. It's like it's disadvantaging those who should have an advantage, is what I saw. And so I'm curious what your thought is. I mean, going off of your thought, is there any way to fix that?
So
win your game.
yeah, suspicious is a weird word to use.
I agree.
Like
it makes me think. Yeah.
I don't think that there's a bunch of old rich white guys sitting up in their ivory towers saying, "How can we make Boise State lose?" I don't think that's happening. And they say, "I know, I'll give them 3 weeks of rest." Like, I don't think that there's any. Suspicious is not the word I would use. Maybe a word that uses that it's telling. It's revealing. Is maybe a right word. Is like, oh wow, maybe they had too much rust. But I think we talked about this a few weeks ago, and it's like you have all the time you need to prepare. And if you're surprised the first time you get hit because you haven't been hit in 3 weeks, fire your coach, because you need to get hit for 3 weeks in order to get ready for a big game. Like, all the preparation is on you. It's nobody else's fault if you're unprepared or you're rusty. And so it's that's how I'd respond to that. To answer the original question, I'm fine with expanding to 16. I think that's a good idea. The more teams there, the better, the more exciting. But you're not going to eliminate any of the complaining. Like that's still going to happen. You're going to have the team, the surprise team that goes 11-1, you know, and they're the 4 seed, and now they got to play the 13th ranked, you know, Michigan or Alabama, and they're like, oh, that's not fair. Why'd you make us play that team? Like, there's gonna be complaining no matter what you do. People are always gonna say, well, we didn't have a fair matchup, you know. And if you extend it to 16, number 17 is gonna complain. Like, you can't fix it by expanding it. It's just the way that it is. There's no complaining in the NFL because the logic is set. And so that's the only way to fix that is to make the logic set, to make it so that the ranking is not based off of reporters deciding who it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like that. You know, I wish they create some kind of numerical based system, you know, computer based system where that's deciding, not some committee. And I think that just literally forgot what I was going to say.
At least you're here to say it.
Yeah, go if you have something, Scott, go ahead. I'm trying to remember now.
Nope. I was gonna finish and thank everyone and close out. So, if you can remember before we do that, that's great. If not, text us. But so next week we have 4 things on the docket. Super Bowl preview. That'll take a large chunk of what we're doing. We'll do a Big 12 review in college football, the same way we did this. I can stop share, can't I? Or I already did. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Big 12 review, the way we did ACC. We'll also return to our memory and PTI. Dustin, you have our PTI for next week. And Yancey has our memory, and so we'll let him know in the chat. But those are just the 4 things. We may have more things to talk about. Obviously, if the Saints hire a coach, we'll talk about that as well.
I just remembered what it was, by the way, so I'll just do it, make it quick. I think that you made good points, Dustin. But I think one thing that's good to say is the thing with college is hard, especially with that 3-week bye, you could say, is just the timing with school. That's really kind of what it is, you know, school, you know, finals or whatever it is going on that the kids need to, you know, focus on. And you don't have that in the NFL, right? It's all just you played. And so the highest teams only have 1 bye week because they don't have a finals to worry about or whatever it is. And so I think it's a lot of this school-based thing that may be getting in the way. But with that being said, I like what you said with the whole idea of, you know, you fire a coach if they're not ready. And while that's true, you can play a game against your own team, but for some reason, and maybe I'm wrong in your guys' opinion, but it's not the same. It's not going to be the same. And that's probably more just the crowd, the real pressure, that kind of stuff going on. Like this is, you know, 4th and 3 on the, you know, this is real, not just a practice game. So yeah, you might be used to getting hit. You might be used to, you know, that kind of stuff. You can do all that, but you haven't been in the environment of the pressure of the game for 3 weeks, and that's causing some type of buffer for your team. And I don't think there's a fix to that. You can't fix that in practice.
That may be true.
Teams show up week 1 ready.
Mm-hmm. You've had 6 months off. So yeah, it's true. All right. Okay. Thanks everyone. And I think next week we may also start reviewing and talking about our ongoing Madden tournament. I think that's a good plan too. So, okay. Thanks everyone. We'll talk to you next week.